For more, I'm joined by CBS Sports NBA insider Bill Reiter and former NBA player John Henson. John, first of all, as a player, if you're making a statement like Brunson did on behalf of your head coach saying, yeah, of course he deserves to be in that role, what does it mean when the organization kind of makes the opposite decision?
You know, the exit meeting conversations and things like that happen just behind the scenes. You just never know. I personally have a soft spot for Tibbs. He tried to revive my career. I signed a 2-10 days before I was promptly kicked out of the NBA. So I love him as a coach, but I think his methods and the things he does just a little outdated, right? Playing guys 40 minutes a game. If you look at the teams that are in the finals right now, they're 8 or 9 deep. So there was a lot of philosophical things that maybe the Knicks weren't happy with. And Tibbs might have said, listen, I'm sticking to my guns. This is what's got me this far. And that might have been the reason that they let him go after such an historic season for the Knicks. And they have a small window. They got to take advantage. And if they felt like he's not the guy, they've got to move quickly.
I mean, you mentioned a historic season, the first time in the Eastern Conference Finals in 25 years, and their head coach gets ousted. Bill, what more can you tell us about what led to that decision?
Well, look, we're all still trying to figure out what Leon Rose's thinking was. And Leon Rose, former agent at CAA, has become basically the J.D. Salinger of the NBA. That guy doesn't talk to anybody. I think John hits on something that's really important, though, because there is a world, this is speculative, and other folks around the NBA have sort of speculated this to me, where Leon went to Thibodeau and said, look, you're great. We love you. We just gave you an extension. We believe in you. You got us to this point. You've won a bunch of series for us, back-to-back years where you've won playoff series. But as John just said, you got to spread it out. And even if the bench isn't as good next year, and it's not going to be, we need minutes to be spread out because our guys can't be run out of steam. The new NBA means that there is more depth, and you have to be able to match that energy level. And there's a world this happens where Tom Thibodeau just says, no, man, that ain't me, Leon. So that might be what happened. Barring that, for me, I can just tell you it's a close call. I understand the thinking. I would have ridden with Tom Thibodeau for another season. I would have given another chance. I think what Jalen Brunson said made sense. And I also think that it's fair to point out that this is a team, this is a Knicks organization that has literally consistently had a toxic culture and has lost for a generation. And under this coach, they won the playoff series last year, and they just made the conference finals. So, look, maybe there's a conversation we're not aware of. That could explain it. Maybe Leon Rose, who likes to be a few moves ahead, knows who his next coach is and feels like that's a level-up guy. We don't know that yet either. Barring that information, I would have given Tibbs another season.
Yeah, well, we'll see who the next coach is because, John, as you mentioned, the window is small for a team to win a championship. And the way the Knicks are playing, being in the Eastern Conference Finals, they're getting close. So when you look to the future, John, who would you have your eye on as a potential next Knicks head coach?
I think the easy kind of choice to look at right now is obviously Mike Malone, championship guy. I mean, the Denver Nuggets were consistently in the mix, whether guys were injured, whoever was out there playing, Denver was always there. And also Taylor Jenkins with Memphis had a rough year. You heard reports that he kind of lost the locker room. But look, that was his first gig. You live and you learn. Sometimes it's not the right spot. But those are two guys that I could see potentially coming to this New York team. I personally had Taylor Jenkins in Milwaukee. I love his philosophy. I love him as a player's coach. I'm sure the Knicks would love him. But I think Mike Malone might be the guy. And as you alluded to before, I think this choice might already be made, personally, if you're going to fire Tibbs just like this without really any kind of conversation or taking time.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I'll throw Jay Wright in the mix just because the Nova Knicks can be the Nova Knicks. And does Jay Wright want to coach in the NBA? That's a big question. And John makes a great point about, I think Michael Malone is the betting favorite. He would be for me. I will add, and don't be mad at me, Knicks fans, although I like this guy, keep an eye on Mike D'Antoni as well, because Malone and D'Antoni were both CAA clients, both had strong relationships with Leon Rose, who runs basketball operations, as we said, when he was at CAA running their basketball division. And I'm with John and Taylor Jenkins. I think he's an incredible coach. So it depends how wide of a net Leon wants to cast. And I'll say this lastly about Michael Malone. Got fired because he couldn't get along apart with his GM, Calvin Booth. They're both gone in Denver. That shouldn't be a problem in New York because, again, there's a relationship between Malone and Rose that short circuits what was the big concern with Malone when he was in Denver.
Absolutely. Well, clearly the Knicks organization felt like they needed to change something. But, Bill, when you look at the context of Tibbs' firing in terms of what it means for this offseason and how they approach that, how does that change things?
I don't think it does. Look, I think Leon Rose has run a pretty impressive ship there. Did he spend too much on Mikal Bridges? Probably. He probably did. I think the question will be, does Leon Rose want to try and unspool one of these guys? And I know it sounds crazy, but people are talking about Cat maybe, and go and find another bigger star or recalibrate this team. But this is a team that just made a conference finals. They won a playoff series last year. The East is going to be, we'll see where Giannis lands or if he goes somewhere else. But we know the Celtics are going to probably have a down year next year. Now, I'm not sleeping on the Pistons, but the Magic are, I think, a star and a score away from being really, really good. Milwaukee's a mess, whether they keep Giannis or they don't. So I think this is still a roster that can win. I think it's still a very, very highly coveted job. And I don't know that Tibbs going away changes their plans. Whatever those plans were going to be, they're going to be. This is still a team. The window, as John said, is short. This is still a team that can compete next year in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree there, too. Continuity is a real thing in the NBA. If you do not have some continuity with your players and you don't have continuity with your staff, you will not be successful. Look at the two teams in the finals now, right? The Pacers were criticized. What are they doing this year? After All-Star break, they were one of the best teams in the NBA. So I don't think that New York should change a lot. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. You were 2 or 3 games away from the finals. You know, sometimes teams and front offices, they get so antsy, like, look, you guys almost made it. We need to just stick with what we got, stick with our core, and go from there. And if we need to tweak it throughout, that's fine. I know the criticism has been on Cat, an aging Cat with his defense. However, where are you going to find someone more talented that's going to help you win at a high level for maybe the price that he's at or less? I don't know anyone out there at the moment. I think you got to stick with him and ride this thing out for at least a year or two, starting with the coach, and then go from there.
Yeah, what's next for the Knicks is one angle of this, but what about what's next for Tom Thibodeau? He's now a free agent. Tibbs is reportedly due at least $30 million guaranteed. As Bill pointed out, he recently signed an extension. And this is a coach who led the Knicks to their first Eastern Finals in 25 years, made the playoffs in 4 of the last 5 years, 4 of his 5 seasons, and led the Knicks to consecutive 50-plus win seasons for the first time since the 90s. So, Bill, when you take a look at that resume, what's next for Tibbs?
Man, I want to say that he should just take some time and go golfing, but Thibodeau doesn't do anything other than basketball. So look, he didn't give me a contract the way that he did John, but I'm with John, and that I like Tom Thibodeau, and I think he's an impressive guy. There is a difference of opinion out there among GMs. I've talked to people before we ever thought he'd get fired who think the game had passed him by, that he's not creative enough offensively. By the way, Knicks were very good on offense in the regular season this year, and there are people who think his obsessive focus and his ability normally to get the best out of guys defensively has value. I think he will find a job, but we have a lot of guys out there. I mean, we have Frank Vogel, Mike Mullen. We have guys out there who have lost jobs, who have won NBA championships. There's only so many of these gigs. They're hard to fill, and a lot of general managers like to go and find the next big assistant coach because it's worked at other spots. I think he'll find a job, but he's not going to just march into whatever team has an opening that he wants. I think it's going to be easier said than done maybe for him this time around.
We'll see how it all pans out. Bill Reiter, John Henson, thanks so much for the insight, as always. Now, Tibbs exits the Knicks with the 4th best playoff winning percentage in franchise history, with a record of 24-23. Time will tell what the future holds for him as an NBA head coach.